When you're setting up a small rack or a growing server closet, the biggest fear is that the power piece you buy will either flicker out at the wrong moment or become a nightmare to manage as you add more equipment. You've probably seen a wall of spec sheets promising megawatts and fancy monitoring, but what you really need is a unit that just works day in day out, lets you keep an eye on consumption without a PhD, and doesn't drain your budget. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I spent the last couple of weeks looking at a handful of rack PDUs for a friend who runs a co-working space with a half rack of network gear. The Vertiv Geist switched rack PDU kept popping up in the forums because it's U-listed, has remote power management, and the bistable relays are supposed to protect against accidental power loss. The rating sits at 4.6 out of 5 from just over 100 reviewers, which isn't a guarantee, but it does suggest the community isn't complaining about major reliability gaps. What I really wanted to understand was how this unit behaves once you plug it in, how the software feels in a real-world network, and whether the price matches the day-to-day value. First off, the installation experience is exactly what you'd expect for a 120-volt, 2.8 kilowatts unit. You mount it in a standard 42U rack, hook the L530P inlet to a dedicated circuit, and then you have a row of NEMA 520R receptacles ready for servers, switches, or storage devices. The bistable relays are the real workhorse here. They stay in the last state they were commanded to, even if the PDU loses power. In practice, that means if you remotely shut a port off, the outlet stays off after a power bounce, and you have to explicitly turn it back on. For a data center admin, that eliminates the "did the outlet just reset on its own" confusion that can happen with simple mechanical switches. Remote power management is where the Geist starts to shine. Vertiv supplies a web interface that runs on the unit's own IP address. The dashboard is clean, no endless scrolling menus, just a quick list of each outlet with its current amperage draw, a toggle for on-off, and a small graph of power usage over the past hour. I tested the interface on a laptop, a phone, and even a tablet that was on a different subnet, and the response was snappy enough that you can turn a misbehaving switch off in seconds. There's also an API, which is useful if you want to script power cycles from a monitoring system like Zabbix or Grafana. I tried a simple curl command to power cycle a port, and it worked on the first try. No need to chase authentication errors. Now, the strengths become clearer when you picture a typical scenario. A network switch starts flapping, you suspect a PO overload, and you want to power it down without walking to the rack. With the Geist you can log in, see the exact amperage the switch is pulling. It was 1.2A in my test, click the off button, and the outlet cuts power cleanly. Because the relays are bistable, the switch stays off even if the PDU itself reboots after a UPS transfer. That reliability is a practical win that you can't capture in a spec sheet. On the flip side, there are a few trade-offs that matter once you move beyond a single rack. The unit only handles 120V, so it won't fit a higher density environment that runs on 208V or 240V. If your data center already has a mixed voltage infrastructure, you'll end up needing a separate PDU for those circuits, which can complicate cable management. Also, the number of outlets is fixed at 24, which is generous for a half rack but could feel cramped if you start stacking blade servers or dense hyperconverged nodes. The management interface, while functional, doesn't include advanced alerts like notify me when a port exceeds 90% of its rating. You'd need to pull the data into a third-party monitoring tool for that level of granularity. Who should buy this? If you're a small to medium IT outfit, a home lab enthusiast, or a boutique co-location provider who needs a reliable way to remotely control power for a modest number of devices, the Geist offers exactly the balance of price and features you need. The UL listing gives you peace of mind that the unit meets safety standards, and the remote management means you can reduce on-site trips, a real cost saver when you're handling multiple racks across a floor. It also fits nicely into environments that already have a dedicated 120V circuit, which is common in many office server rooms. Who should skip it? If you run a large enterprise data center with 208V or 240V distribution, or you need more than 24 outlets per rack, you'll quickly outgrow this model. Similarly, if you rely heavily on out-of-the-box alerting and don't want to integrate an external monitoring solution, you might look for a PDU that bundles advanced SNMP traps and threshold notifications. Lastly, if you expect to run high-power appliances like dense GPU rigs that can